This is the Surly Grognards for September 12th, 2016. This is Peter Bowman, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Eric Carlson. How are you doing tonight, Eric?
I am doing fine.
Are you living long and prospering?
No.
I don't know.
But today is a good day to die.
Oh, there. Oh, God. So, yeah, this past Thursday was Star Trek's 50th anniversary. And Eric and I,
Yeah.
being gigantic Star Trek fans,
Yeah, I think I came to the conclusion the other day that Star Trek might be my favorite franchise.
it's way up on the list, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um,
because I'm always up for Star Trek, but I'm not always up for Star Wars, which is the other one.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, so here, okay. So, anyways, Star Trek's 50th anniversary was on last Thursday, and we've talked a lot about Star Trek on the show. We've had a couple of episodes we've dedicated to Star Trek, but
'Cause,
um,
yeah, the
because we
best.
fucking love Star Trek.
We're
Let's be honest.
giant nerds. Of course we love Star Trek.
Eric and I sort of decided we wanted to talk about Star Trek today because we love it, and it was its
Yay!
anniversary. It's a good time. It's a good time to talk about Star Trek.
Yeah, I figured we should do something for the 50th.
Yeah. I mean, actually, to be fair, there's never really a bad time to talk about Star Trek. Well, that's not true. There are bad times to talk about Star Trek.
Yeah,
A funeral,
like you
for
probably
instance.
don't want to gush about your favorite Star Trek episode during sex.
Probably not.
Well, unless that's her thing, so...
But, a funeral, probably not the best time.
Yeah.
Even if the dearly departed was a Trekkie.
I'm a little more forgiving of the funeral, but yeah, it's probably a faux pas.
It's a definitive faux pas. Most workplaces probably not the best place to talk about Star Trek either.
Usually because no one actually gives a fuck, in my experience. Eric, shut up. No one cares about Star Trek.
It's not true, but
No one in the room cares about Star
that
Trek.
is probably the case. At any rate, yeah. So 50th anniversary, and yeah, Eric, Eric and I definitely think of this sci-fi milieu at least. I struggle to think, especially the visual media.
Yeah.
I really struggle to think of a franchise I like more.
There might be individual works that I've enjoyed more, but as far as a franchise with multiple entries across multiple
Yep.
media, yeah, Star Trek. It's pretty much Star Trek and Star Wars.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there are others.
There are others. You've got Battlestar Galactica. You've got Flash Gordon.
Yep, both of which are immense fun.
Yes.
But they're not Star Trek or Star Wars, to be honest.
Well, that's kind of the thing. Star Trek, despite always focusing on the Federation, has a lot of different stories to tell, and it's kind of wide open. Like you're locked into a single narrative in, say, Star Wars, where it's good versus evil, Jedi versus Sith, Rebels versus Empire, that sort of deal. There's always that dichotomy in Star Wars. It's part of it's part of the glue that holds it together,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a good story. You can tell it infinite number of times in infinite variations, and it works great. But you can do so much other stuff in Star Trek, like you can do the moral dilemma of, do I help these people or not? Is this the right thing to do? You can do showing the struggling with one's conscience in 1,000 different ways. You can do straight up war story. Like, good portion of Deep Space Nine, my favorite Star Trek, is a straight up war story.
Right. Well, I mean, honestly, it's the big difference. I mean, not to focus too much on Star Wars, but it's the big difference between sci-fi and space opera.
Yes.
I mean, I love space opera. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, I adore space opera. Space opera is great.
And while Star Trek, its science is occasionally wonky.
Occasionally wonky. Heisenberg compensators, man.
Yeah. Well, That's actually I will this Heisenberg compensator is the sort of thing that I approve of in Star Trek, where they basically try to explain. They basically come up with a solution to explain why something that should not be physically possible is possible in this text.
Okay, fair enough.
Curing,
0.5
cure,
AU.
I was about to say curing Tom Paris of being a salamander by bombarding him with 0.52 AMUs of antiproton radiation. That's just bad science.
Yeah.
0.52 AMUs. You're bombarding it with antiquarks. Oh no, that's gonna do so. Stop that. Do you know what an AMU is? It's an atomic mass unit.
Clearly, the scriptwriter didn't. And
No.
to be fair, Voyager was the biggest sinner when it came to not getting their science right.
Pretty much.
Not that any Star Trek series is free of that.
Right, but the thing about Trek is that they are taking it. They're doing the thing that great sci-fi usually does in most Trek. They're using the science fiction set, the futuristic science setting to look at other things.
Yes.
So I mean, there's a lot of sort of looking at things from a philosophical standpoint, which is often a big trait of great sci-fi.
And even looking at contemporary issues, like particularly the original series is great at this.
Oh, absolutely.
Like a good portion of their stuff was outright dissection of the Cold War or the Civil Rights Movement.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean,
and a whole lot of your gods are dumb. They're not even real gods. Stop it.
Right. And the thing I love, I mean, it's one of the many reasons that sort of thing is one of the many reasons why I ended up listing when we did our episode on our favorite Star Trek series. It's why the original series ended up being my favorite series, my top rated series on that list. Despite the fact that in many ways, if I was to sit down and just to watch some Star Trek for fun, I would probably watch Next Gen after season 1 and before season 7.
Post season 1 and
season 7.
Yeah, it's a pretty big thing. You can get rid of a lot of season 2 also.
Probably, but you can do that largely with a lot of long running shows. I mean, hell, a lot of DS9's first season is also not very good.
Yeah, you can. Good rule of thumb: skip the first season of any Star Trek.
I wouldn't say skip it, but
when you're going back to rewatch it, you can skip the first season.
If you're rewatching, yeah.
Like particularly fucking TNG. Like, wow, they had a lot of stinkers in there.
Oh, they had some really good stuff in there, but no, there's a lot of bad stuff in the first season. I love TNG. I prefer TNG to DS9 personally, but
TNG is great. TNG does in fact have my favorite episode of Star Trek, Best of Both Worlds. Like,
TNG has a large chunk of my absolute favorite. My favorite episode of Star Trek is not TNG; it's original series.
Was it Best of Both Worlds?
That's not original series.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got that backwards in my head. No, it's probably Balance of Terror. That's what I'm guessing. No?
City on the Edge of Forever.
Ah, that is a good one.
It's a fucking amazing one.
It's not as good as Spock's Brain, though.
Stop that. Bad Eric, naughty Eric. But no, Balance of Terror is also really fucking amazing.
Yeah, Balance of Terror is probably my favorite original series.
Yeah, I can see that
episode. Because it's really fucking good. And it does something that you don't see often enough in Star Trek. A large portion of the narrative is told through the antagonist's point of view.
Yes. Which is really neat.
Yes. And you don't see that enough in Star Trek, honestly.
No, you don't.
Or even just from a non-Federation point of view. DS9 does a really good job of it because you've got you've got the hangers-on that aren't members of the Federation that are constantly criticizing and pointing out its flaws.
Right.
Which is one of the things I like about it, because particularly in Next Gen, the Federation is held up as this like flawless ideal, and yes, out of all these Star Trek governments, I'd probably want to live in the Federation. It clearly has some holes in it, and it's nice to see someone there to poke holes in it.
Oh yeah,
Quark and Garrick, I'm looking straight at you guys.
yes. And but the thing I love about that though is, despite all of that, Quark ends up coming to the conclusion that there's a lot about the Federation that.
Yes, both Quark and Garrick come to the conclusion that despite its flaws, it's a good thing it exists, and they side with it. Versus, in Quark's case, his own self-interest, and in Garrick's case, his own people. Granted, they kind of been absorbed by evil, shape-shifting fascists, but
true. And Garrick,
not like the Cardassians were anything but fascists to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, Garrick, he's not. He'd left.
Yeah.
He'd had enough of the Obsidian Order, which he was a member of.
It's heavily implied that he was kicked out or chased out.
Yes.
But he doesn't miss it either. Well, there are a few episodes where it shows that he misses it, but he gets over it pretty quick.
There's a lot about it he misses, but I think that he also acknowledges the fundamental just awfulness of the Obsidian Order.
Yeah. It's actually a great episode where Garrick basically rejoins the Obsidian Order for an attack on the Founders. The Tal Shiar and the Obsidian Order team up to go go through the wormhole and attack the Dominion's Founders.
As an aside, that's a terrifying team up.
Yes, it really is. And they've captured Odo, and as a test of loyalty, Garrick's old boss and mentor is like, I need you to interrogate Odo so we know everything we're getting into here. And so Garrick comes up, pulls out this little device that keeps Odo from shapeshifting and sets it up, and his plan is just to wait out Odo because he needs to turn to goo once every 8 hours. And that's his plan of torture. And Odo is not the one that breaks, Garrick does, because he doesn't want to hurt his friend.
Right.
And it's a heart-wrenching moment because, yeah, Odo's breaking, but not as quickly as Garrick, who's doing this damnedest to keep up the facade.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, it's a great scene.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, my God. But, yeah, wow. Yeah,
DS9 has a lot of great stuff like that. DS9 has a lot of stinkers, too.
Yeah.
Like, the one where Worf goes to the vacation planet and is the world's biggest stick in the mud. That movie is... That episode is cringeworthy. Just skip that one. I don't even remember the name of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's the really weird thing is, like, as much as... But yeah, so... I like looking at it. So I sort of going back to our whole thing about why we love why Star Trek is our sort of our favorite our favorite really is like I'd say probably there are probably individual series we both like better than Star Trek as an average, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like I can see the argument for sort of arguing that Farscape as a whole might be better on sort of the average overall quality of Farscape might be better than the average overall quality of Star Trek.
I can see that, yeah. And I love me some Farscape. Farscape's great, but Farscape is one series and some comic books.
Right.
A series that died too soon. Same with Firefly. The average of Firefly is phenomenally high, but it's only got a half dozen episodes.
Right. It's got a dozen episodes, actually.
Slight exaggeration.
And a movie, but yeah.
Yeah.
A flawed movie, but a movie nonetheless.
A fun movie. I will certainly give it that.
It was fun, but it was definitely flawed.
Yeah.
But yeah, And like I fucking adore Babylon 5.
Yes.
But, and Babylon 5 has multiple series. Two of them. Two and a half.
Yeah, but we can get those other series. They didn't happen. They aren't real.
And a pilot for a third.
No, they were all terrible except for Babylon 5.
And a bunch of sort of made-for-TV movies, which were mostly terrible.
The Tybosphere!
That was the pilot. That's the pilot for the third series, and that was
Oh,
Legend of
is
the
it?
Rangers
Okay.
was Legend of the Rangers was really fucking bad.
It really was.
Oh, that was bad. Oh, oh. But
And
yeah,
what was it? Babylon 5 Crusades, where it was basically Star Blazers, but not as good.
yeah,
Not even remotely as good.
no, and that only got 13 episodes because it was really not good and was not getting viewership.
Yeah, it was not good.
Also, it got heavily hammered. Apparently, there's a lot of executive meddling also.
That doesn't surprise me.
So that ended up actually crippling.
I mean,
the show.
B5 had a lot of executive meddling. That's kind of the reason why Season 4 is so uneven and Season 5 is very much a, what do we do now?
And despite that, season 4 is overall pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I love Babylon 5 to pieces, but yeah, and like most sci-fi series, the first season is rocky.
Yeah. I will say this. Babylon 5 has some of the greatest acting I've seen. It's also got a lot of the worst.
Yeah,
Like, oh.
yeah,
Sheridan takes a while to come into his own, but for a lot of it, he's over or under emoting. He's like a parody of William Shatner.
yeah. Boxleitner is a good actor, but it took him a while to find his way into the role.
Yeah, once he got there, he was fine, but yeah,
And I in the past I criticized Michael O'Hare's job as Sinclair in the first season.
yeah,
And looking back and knowing what I know now, I'm amazed he did what he did.
yeah. No, definitely. Knowing what was happening behind the scenes puts a whole new light on his performance, which. Yeah, I would have criticized if had I not known it.
It's like yeah, I thought I mean the character's supposed to be somewhat wooden, but he really came across as kind of wooden and didn't do a great. It wasn't very good and just didn't do a great job acting. And then there are two things you find out. One is that O'Hare was primarily a stage actor and wasn't really comfortable doing television.
Hmm.
And two, he was suffering from schizophrenia and was
Yeah, some really nasty stuff that the meds weren't handling properly.
right. And
Yeah.
JMS was more than willing to let him sort of leave the show and get himself well, but he refused because he he really didn't want to him leave. He thought leaving that the one of the major big stars of the lead character of the show leaving mid-season would probably break the show, and he probably would have been right. Because that kind of a drastic change in the first season could really have done a number on the show.
Yeah, it could have frankly killed the show.
Yeah, and O'Hare just flatly said no, I can do this, and did, and basically made JMS promise not to
Not to tell anyone.
not tell anyone while O'Hare was still alive. And JMS after he passed away, JMS then fought, he was JMS was willing to just say never reveal it, and O'Hare said no, you should let people know after I'm gone.
Mm.
And yeah, at any rate,
Back to Star Trek.
back to Star Trek. Yeah, but my point being though is that I love Babylon 5, but it's just one series, and
Yeah.
even at its I adore Bab 5, and it looks at a lot of really interesting stuff. But because Star Trek has been around for so long and has done so much good stuff and looked at so many different sort of things, the sheer quantity of great stuff that Star Trek has done, I sort of just
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, friggin'. Yeah, I mean, and TOS is really where it sort of
Yes.
came,
Yeah.
not it came together, and TNG is where it achieved its zenith,
Yeah.
and Enterprise is where it hit its nadir. But
Oh, poor Enterprise. That was a show
they were so happy with mediocre, and then they finally got their shit together, and they were like, "No, not too late. You're done."
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, the Xindi War arc was decent. Which is
Yeah, it wasn't
season 3.
it was decent. It was the big problem with the Xindi War arc is that it was trying to invoke. It was trying to do the same, a lot of the same thing that the Dominion War did on a smaller scale, and couldn't quite figure out how to make it fly.
Right.
And it was an example of probably Enterprise's biggest sin, which was aiming for mediocrity.
Mm. I mean, there's some really good stuff there, but it was also just heavily saddled. It's heavily hurt by the whole sort of temporal Cold War thing that was sort of tied into it.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I always forget about the temporal Cold War because it's fucking stupid.
I agree. And season 3, and they stop this they stop the Sphere Builders end of season 3, and then get flung into the past and alien Nazis, and no
Space Nazis.
time traveling aliens who have infiltrated the Nazis. What? No.
You can do that, but it has to be so heavily tongue-in-cheek and played so much for camp and absurdity. Like, you can't do that seriously at all.
And they tried. Well, it looked like they were going to try. And then Berman and Braga left the show after season 3, and the new people came in and said,
"No, no more space Nazis.
We are sweeping this under the rug as fast as possible and getting to an actual story." Which they did, and it was good. And then the show was canceled.
Yep, let's do the Romulan War. Oh, sweet, let's do that. Oh, now we're canceled. Fuck.
But yeah, like, yeah, just sort of looking back at the stuff in Trek that I do, I'm like, again, yeah, original series is sort of the sort of, as we said, where it started, and sort of how often they would look at societal stuff was like modern society at of the 60s, and sort of analyze it and deconstruct it, and
yeah, and it was
hold a giant spotlight up to things.
Yeah, and some of it was done with all the subtlety of brick on the end of a bag of bricks, fired out of a brick launching brick machine.
True, but sometimes that actually works too.
Sure, I in particular, remembering the planet where people were black on the left side and white on the right side,
Right.
and yeah.
The thing about that, though, is there are a lot of people who actually cite that as something they watched when they were a kid, and it really drove home the point of how just completely absurd judging someone on the color of their skin is.
Right, and I say that because it was one of the least subtle things they could have done, but it worked.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that, especially at that sort of time, there are times when you, like, not being subtle is the completely right thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean,
there are times you actually do need a sledgehammer to crack that walnut.
Yeah. that is a level of just sort of pointing out just how completely fucking absurd it is. It's like, yeah, this is so completely absurd, we're going to make it fucking obvious.
Yeah.
Just how dumb this is.
Like, seriously, guys, come on.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, and TNG was not afraid to sit back and do more meditative work also. Like, some of the best stuff is like that. Like, I think it's Inner Light, the one where Picard lives the entire lifetime in the span of a few seconds.
That episode is so fucking good.
It's amazing. It's one of their best works, and It's entirely just a meditation on a lifetime,
Yeah.
and going a meditation on a man going through his life, and not even a particularly remarkable man, just a guy going through his life in his society, and it's fucking amazing.
It's fantastic. It's oh my god, I love that one. There's so much stuff like that in Next Gen that just you just look at it and you're like, what? And like
Yeah.
the episode where they introduce the Borg
Yes.
is amazing because it's one of those rare times in science fiction where they introduce an alien threat that is completely alien.
Yes.
And
And it's great and it's amazing. And Voyager tried to do the same thing with species insert long number here.
yes,
And the design was wonderfully inhuman.
yes,
And their technology was so weird, but psychologically they're basically just jerk off humans.
yeah, yeah. Whereas the Borg are just
Incomprehensible.
yeah, and that's brilliant. Brilliant. I love that.
Incomprehensible, and we can only really interpret them in a primal manner because clearly they have higher ideals involved. They wouldn't have gotten this far without that. But they're so beyond our ken, or not even necessarily beyond our ken, just outright alien, that we can only see them as sort of this force of nature eating and absorbing everything in their path.
Mm-hmm.
But there's clearly more at work there. We just can't see it. We can't understand it. And that's what's great about the Borg.
Yep.
And they gave them a fucking queen.
Mm.
I still haven't forgiven First Contact for that.
No, me neither. That's sort of weirdly, the movies are sort of like, despite the fact there are some very good Star Trek movies, they're sort of the elephant in the room for Star Trek, even almost more so than Voyager and Enterprise.
Yes. Well, the TNG movies, certainly.
Ugh.
Because you've got some of the best Trek is, in fact, the TOS movies, like
well, some of them,
Wrath of Khan. Seriously, Wrath of Khan, man.
Incredible movie. Fantastic. Search for Spock is solid, not great.
Yeah, Search for Spock is solid. I adore friggin' Undiscovered Country.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's probably my favorite, although I recognize it's got some pretty big flaws. And then you've got 5.
Yeah. I mean, and hell, Star Trek 4 is not a great Star Trek movie, but it's a wonderful sci-fi comedy.
Yes. You're telling me you're from space? No, I'm from Iowa. I only work in space.
And that's the thing I love about Trek is that it can do that sort of thing.
Yeah, like
they can literally have this just random this almost random sci-fi comedy dropped in the middle of their movies, and it still works.
Yes. You know what though? Of all the Treks that tried to do comedy, the only ones that really managed to succeed were TOS, counting the movies, and a couple episodes of DS9.
Yeah. Oh,
looking at you, Trials and Tribulations, probably the funniest one.
That episode is hilarious and really good.
Those are Klingons? Everyone looks at Worf. We don't talk about it.
It was a long time ago, and we don't talk about it. Okay. But yeah, I there's a lot of just really interesting. I mean, and you mentioned we briefly talked about Bab 5 about the acting, and there's some spectacular acting in Trek.
Yes. Like for all the shit Shatner gets, he's pretty damn good in a lot of it.
There are episodes where he's incredible. Like
yes,
back to like City of the Edge of Forever, the end of that episode. Shatner is just broken.
Amok Time.
Yeah, he's really good in that. He has bits where he's really like, and all of Wrath of Khan, he's really good in Wrath of Khan.
He's really, really good in Wrath of Khan.
When Shatner's actually not hamming it up to a ridiculous degree, he can be very good.
Yes.
And then you have Leonard Nimoy, who's wonderful.
The man has taken the lack of emoting to an art form. Because it's not that Spock doesn't emote. He does. He just does it so... He does it so understated.
Yes.
And the few times where he actually does, it's like, holy shit.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I really like about the original series, actually, is that you have this sort of, like, tripart whole in Kirk, Spock, and McCoy.
Yep.
And, yeah.
I wouldn't call forgot his name all of a sudden. DeForest Kelley? Yes.
Yeah.
He's not a great actor, but for the role he had, he was perfect.
Yeah. He there's a reason why McCoy is always remembered as being awesome. Like, and just his constant exasperation at the ridiculousness of what's going on. And you needed him there to go, this is fucking stupid. For a lot of it. Like, you want me to conduct surgery on a silicate-based carpet? Really? I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer.
Oh, he's wonderful at that. And a good chunk of that's the writing, obviously. But
yes,
and Nichelle Nichols, she does a wonderful job as Uhura, and one of the most important female characters in science fiction.
Yes, absolutely.
And she's wonderful, and George Takei eventually got very good.
Yes. There's a great scene that I remember, because knowing what we know about Takei now, where I think it's the one with the stupid space hippies.
Okay.
And one of the space hippies is trying to seduce Sulu. And she goes, I know, come on, I know you want it. And Sulu just gets this big grin on his face. You have no idea what I want. And knowing we know about Takei is like, holy shit, dude, you had too much fun with that line.
Oh, I love George Takei so much.
I really do. That man is a fucking treasure.
He's great. Oh God, James Doohan is wonderful. And sorely missed.
Yeah. I have to say, I wasn't too impressed with him in the original series, but
in the movies,
he really knocks it out of the park once he gets into the movies.
Yes. Oh,
he's
there are a lot of them that got a lot better as they got older.
Yes.
Walter Koenig.
Yeah.
Is a phenomenal actor now. I mean, seriously, you watch him in the original series, and watch him in even in the Trek in the original series movies, and he gets better. And then you see him in Babylon 5, and you realize this man has range.
Yes.
Because he goes from playing, the very likable and, earnest Chekhov to one of the best sci-fi villains ever in Alfred Bester.
Yes. Like, yeah. And then Byron happens and you root for Bester.
Yes. Oh my God. But yeah, like they all, like, it's just astonishing. Like looking at the people from the original series and looking how they what they become and how great they became.
To be fair, I'm gonna give Walter Koenig a bit more more chops, because he was clearly heavily hampered by that stupid accent.
Yeah.
Like, You, especially in Star Trek Two, Wrath of Khan, you can see him struggling with it. Like when he first puts it together where they are, and it's like Alpha Ceti 6, Alpha Ceti 4, we have to go.
Which is a great bit of acting, honestly.
Yes.
I know. I love him. He's wonderful. And then we got that. We got all that stuff, and then you start looking at the acting in Next Gen, and it's ragged for a while. But you've got a few people in there who just completely anchor the show. I mean,
yes.
Looking at you, Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart, yeah, that he held that show together for the longest time.
Yeah. And
Jonathan Frakes really comes to his own, as does Brett Spiner.
Yeah, both Frakes and Spiner got a lot better as the show went along.
Yep.
And Frakes has developed into a really good director.
Yes. Yeah, Frakes is a great director. Michael Dorn, once he started getting stuff he could work with. Part of that is Worf as a character really didn't come into his own until he headed over to DS9.
No, he had some good stuff in Next Gen also, but yeah.
Like, one of the things I really like about how Worf developed in Deep Space Nine is he develops this dry as a Sahara wit.
Yeah. But I mean, like, Worf as a character has some great stuff, usually in the stuff that involved interacting with this, when they were actually interacting with Klingons.
Yes.
Those were fantastic.
Yeah, and always seeing the conflict in Worf with the idealized Klingon society he has in his head versus the actual reality, and him butting his head against that and trying to work through it.
Right.
Like, I remember the Next Gen episode where during the Klingon Civil War, where he walks into the bar and looking for his brother, who is sitting there drinking with the enemy, having a good time. It's like, what the hell are you doing? These are enemies. No. These are Klingons. Once we go outside that door, they're my enemy. We're all just warriors. Relax. Have a drink. Get that tungsten rod out of your ass.
But yeah, like, there's that, and Spiner got really good as he went along.
Yes.
Marina Sirtis is actually a much better actress than you think she would be at first from watching Next Gen. She's really hampered by a lot of the writing that Troy gets, which is unfortunate.
She was hampered by a lot of crappy writing for Troy, because I didn't think she was very good until I realized she was Desdemona in Gargoyles.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, she's really good. Okay.
Yeah, no, I really, again, you look back and you realize, it's the writing. Oh.
Yeah.
The woman who plays Beverly Crusher is fine. I mean, not great.
Yep. LeVar Burton.
LeVar Burton's wonderful.
He was the other guy that really held that show together, honestly.
Yeah. And anytime John Delancey showed up as Q was...
Yes.
watching him and Stewart play off each other is like one of the best things ever.
Clearly having the time of their lives.
And Q is such a wonderful, wonderful character for that show. I mean,
he's
the
best manifestation of the full of himself godling I've ever seen in Star Trek.
Yeah, oh God, yes. And no small part of it is just down to how well Delancey pulls that part off.
Yes.
Oh.
Like, just the degree of fun he has with the role. He clearly just loves the hell out of playing Q.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Sir, I protest. I am not a merry man. That was Worf again, but still, it's...
and there's just all this wonderful stuff they do in that, and and then you got the acting in DS9, and there's some phenomenal actors in there. I mean,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Avery Brooks is just fantastic.
Oh yeah, like you really want to see him act. Watch fucking my second favorite Star Trek episode ever, In the Pale Moonlight.
Right.
Like you really see him just struggling with the decisions he's making and the weight of the war on his shoulders, and it's just like, wow, well done, dude.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And the moments where he lashes out because he's so frustrated. Like he doesn't let it happen much, but there's one scene where okay, so in the Pale Moonlight is the story about Sisko and Garak trying to get the Romulans into the Dominion War. So they come up with a plan to forge Cardassian documents detailing the invasion of Romulus. And Sisko is not comfortable with this, but he doesn't see another option. And he really, really hates having it, like the weight of the war and his responsibilities as a commander in it are really weighing down on him. And he doesn't see a way to win the war without the Romulans. So he's like, fine, Garak, you evil motherfucker, we'll do it your way. And there's a scene where they have the guy doing the forging for them. And he's like, haha, and it's done. I put the data rod in the thing, and now I'm going to leave. And I'm going to go and do all these things. And Sisko, like, stops him. He's like, no, you're not going anywhere. Not until this passes our muster. It's like, that's not the deal. I'm changing the deal! And he goes full Darth Vader, slams him against the wall, and it's... Then he realizes what he's done, and he can see that little change in his expression where he's like, I really feel shitty about this, but I can't let up now, or this criminal will take advantage of it. And then Garak steps in to save the day with the most understated threat I've ever seen in any fiction. I'll be by later to check up on you and say hello.
Oh, Garak.
And the whole episode is just chock full of Sisko's struggles and little subtleties and outbursts, and yeah, it's great. I love that episode.
Yeah, and Rene Auberjonois as Odo was phenomenal.
Yes. Another deeply conflicted character that
yes.
Manages to get so much work done despite the friggin' pound and a half of makeup on his face.
Yeah. Oh my god. And Armin Shimmerman as Quark is just magic, honestly.
He's initially kind of grating, but as the character develops, he really, like, yeah. He's great. Major Kira, I can't remember the actress's name.
Nana Visitor.
Yes, she's great. Another character that I found really grating at first, that really grew into it. Like, that's... What I really like about Major Kira is that she's one of the few instances of a person of faith in Star Trek that doesn't turn out to be a deluded idiot.
There are a number of them here and there where that's the case, but it's not that common. I'd agree.
Yeah, not that DS9 is not without its deluded religious idiots. Looking at you, Kai Wynn.
What? No. Well, it doesn't help that it doesn't help that she's also a gigantic hypocrite on top of everything else.
Yeah, no, Kai Wynn's a horrible person. Like, one of the three best antagonists in Star Trek, two of which belong to DS9. Partially because DS9 has the advantage of being able to develop its antagonists properly because they're not traveling throughout space. They're stuck on this fucking space wheel, and all their antagonists are there or come to them and are repeated antagonists. Well, the good ones anyway.
Yep.
With Gul Dukat and Kai Wynn. I'm really singing DS9's praises tonight.
Well, again, it's the nature of the setting that allows them to do that.
Exactly.
It's hard, given what Next Gen and the original series are, it's very hard to have a recurring antagonist.
Yes, and that was exactly my point. And that's not a slight against those series because
no, not at all. they're different.
because
It's just a different style of show.
it's a different style of show, and what TOS and Next Gen can do that DS9 can't is have a much greater range of scenarios they can go into, because we've warped into this system, and now we're dealing with this weird thing that's going on. Like
both those shows are about exploration.
Yes, and to another extent, Voyager, who we haven't talked about because
It's not that
I'll give
good.
Voyager credit where credit is due. Voyager really shot for the fences. They really tried.
Well, I mean, they were trying to recapture a lot of the spirit of the original series,
Yes,
and they occasionally hit that mark.
yes, and they have some great episodes in there. Scorpion with the reintroduction of the Borg, the real Borg.
Yeah, yes, the Scorpion, that half of the two-parter is mostly very good.
Yes,
The second half is not.
and there's another episode I remember where they find a ship traveling through space that's all damaged and limping along, and the only living crew member on it is the menial hologram. So they send the doctor over, who is himself a hologram, and Torres, their engineer, to help get things fixed up. And it's another great episode because it shows someone else, another person struggling with the idea of being treated as an equal and a sapient. The same thing the Doctor goes through a lot, particularly dealing with Janeway and her craziness. and him trying to help him out, and seeing how his struggle, without having the support that was there on Voyager for the Doctor, can drive him mad, because that other hologram was a homicidal maniac and a giant ball of rage.
Right. But yeah, they're in. And
it's a great episode. I loved watching that episode. It's also probably the closest Star Trek gets to an actual horror story that doesn't involve brain parasites.
Yeah.
Or the Borg.
Yeah. Yeah, there's Voyager. I really wish Voyager ended up being better than it was.
Yeah, like I said, credit where credit is due. Voyager tries really hard. It does have some great breakout characters like the Doctor, Seven of Nine. I want to like Harry Kim. I can't, but I want to.
Yeah.
Part of it is he really is the show's punching bag.
Yep. And Janeway should be a better character than she is. And it is not even a little bit Kate Mulgrew's fault.
Oh no, she's great. The biggest problem is I forget where I heard this, but I remember hearing a general criticism of Voyager was that Janeway could never be wrong.
Yep.
Like even when there are giant holes in her logic, the plot will jump through hoops and do backflips to make sure she ends up being right all along.
Yep.
And that's a real criticism, because it's a real problem with Janeway. And it's a problem with the writing, honestly.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Every other captain got to be wrong.
Yeah.
Or is allowed to grow from that experience. So you never see that with Janeway.
Yeah, fucking Kirk is wrong a fair bit. I mean, and
Yeah. Kirk, Picard, Sisko, fucking Archer was wrong more often than Janeway.
Yeah.
Although, yeah, Archer did have Captain Genocidal friggin' Doctor on it. I'm never going to forgive Phlox for that one episode, honestly. Like, seriously, dude. For those who don't know, there's an episode of Enterprise where they come across a planet with the two sapient species on it. One's more or less like Cro-Mag level. They're not, or Neanderthal level rather. They're not very bright. They're by not very bright, I mean fucking stupid. and a much more intelligent one. And they sort of occupy these two different strata in society. To the more intelligent species' credit, they work really hard to make sure these guys have all the opportunities they can. But the Cro-Mag, for all intents and purposes, are suffering from some sort of genetic disease that's slowly wiping them out and making it so that they can't breathe. Dr. Flux figures out a solution. He can save these people, he can save the society, but comes to the conclusion that he shouldn't, so that the Neanderthal equivalents can evolve to fill their niche. I'm like, that's not how evolution works, and you're wiping out an entire society through your inaction because reasons? Despite the fact they actually beg him for it.
Yep.
Like, yeah, I can't forgive that character for that. Sorry, dude. You're, in any other Star Trek, you would be the villain. And that's actually a good indictment of Enterprise in general. Not only did it shoot for mediocrity, it seemed to have a real misunderstanding about Star Trek.
Yep.
Like the whole, like, what's the word I'm looking for? The whole Prime Directive thing can sometimes really bind them, particularly in Voyager. But something to always remember is they always break it when it involves a mission of mercy kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, that's
Kirk
the thing.
broke it left and right because of that. Picard did so, though always with great reservations.
Well, that's the thing. They
didn't really need to because he wasn't an explorer.
Right. But that's the thing. They would often look for ways to get around it.
Yes.
If they felt that it was actually, would actually be helpful. It's like, okay, we shouldn't do it for this reasons, but if we can find a way around it, we can do something. We'd like to do something.
I remember one where they come across this fairly primitive planet where with these two warring sides. The Klingons had been up jumping the tech on one side, so because there was some reason, some rare mineral or resource on the planet that both the Federation and the Klingons wanted.
Right.
And Kirk's like, they're going to be wiped out. How do we get around this? Spock's like, well, the Prime Directive says we can't get directly involved. To which Kirk responds, but they will be destroyed. Spock says, well, even if they are changed, it is better to save them and be changed than to be wiped out.
Yeah.
And that's a problem I have with later Trek, is the strict adherence to the dogma of the Prime Directive as opposed to using it as a guiding principle for your actions.
Yep. I agree with you. I agree. It's more of a problem. Interestingly, it becomes more of a problem the longer the series goes on. Interestingly,
yes. I'm sure there are times where Cisco had to deal with it, but I can't remember any off the top of my head.
Yeah, me neither.
Like I said, because, well, they're not really explorers. They do some exploration once they get the Defiant, but they're mostly dealing with the Dominion at that point.
Yep. Boy.
Also, I love Klingons. They're one of my favorite alien species in any medium. They are really up there. I love that there's space Vikings with a society with a government that seems to be closer to the Holy Roman Empire, but somehow still works.
No, that's the thing. I by the time Next Gen rolls around, you start being up. They do a really good job at sort of starting to sort of create these non-human governments.
Yes.
And fleshing them out, and and Next Gen mostly did it with the Klingons.
Yep.
But
they did it some with the Romulans too. You first learn that the Romulans have a Senate, that the Senate is this chaotic mess of backstabbing and skullduggery, but to be seen doing it in the open is considered gauche.
Right.
Meanwhile, the Klingons have their fair share of skullduggery, but it's very Holy Roman Empire. It's a bunch of great houses constantly warring and vying against one another. But they all listen to the High Council, of which they all have representatives on it.
Right.
One of the great things is when they're doing where Picard's been chosen as the mediator for who's going to be the next High Chancellor. And you've got Duras and Gowron. Both are obviously political snakes.
Yep.
And they're constantly trying to assassinate one another. One of them does it via a bomb planted in his aide's arm. And that Picard undergoes the investigates much more thoroughly than either of them do, and comes to the conclusion that this is a Romulan device. And before that, he's having the meeting with them, and he goes, "So, what have you guys found out?" It was a common explosive. Anyone could have done it. Might not even be one of us. Well, we found that it was using a molecular decay trigger, and Gowron glares at Duras, a Romulan device. And it's clear, Duras is willing to let it slide, but just go, I wish I had thought of that. That was a good ploy. Didn't work, but I wish I had thought of it. Wait a minute, Romulans? You got Romulans involved?
Yeah, I love Gowron.
It's like, I was okay to let this slide. It's all part of the game, dude, but you do not involve outsiders when they have to be. And it's all Kinpek's fault that he's here in the first place. So what are you doing getting in bed with the Romulans? And it's all communicated through Gowron's glare.
Well, the guy who plays Gowron has just such an expressive face.
The dude's got those crazy eyes. Like,
Yes.
It's just like bug out, like leap past the freaking avalanche of a brow he has. Which I think is the fault of the makeup, to be fair.
Yeah, but it works for the character.
It works great for the character.
He also has one of the most savage grins I've ever seen.
Yes. Now, Gowron's a great image of a Klingon.
Yes. Oh, he is one of my favorite Klingon characters, honestly. I adore.
He's up there. I think for me, it's probably General Chang.
Yeah, oh, sure. Chang's great.
Chang's great. He's also much less of the space Klingon, the space Viking, more of the vicious space samurai.
Yeah,
which is a nice change.
Oh, he's very different and very interesting. I like him a lot.
Yeah, and that's probably why he's one of my favorites, is because he's very much a Klingon. Like, there's no question. Like, this is a Klingon character, but he's very different from any other Klingons we've seen. Worf is the same way. He's a Klingon. He's all about being Klingon and living up to Klingon ideals. But he's so clearly so very different from other Klingons that you see.
Yep. Well, and again, Gowron's actually fairly different from a lot of Klingons also.
Right, because he's a snake.
But a wonderful one. He's such a...
Yeah, he
is one of the most just brilliant politicians that the show has shown.
Yes.
Because he's capable of... He's capable of extreme subtlety when it's necessary.
Theodore is the big heavy hammer to the face when he thinks he can get away with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, oh no, if he doesn't,
like, I'd rather hit you in the face, but I'll stab you in the back if I have to.
Yeah. But he also
Gowron's great.
No, he's fantastic. I think he is one. As I love him. I love Kempek. He's just
for having one scene, he really knocks it out of the park.
He has more than one scene. He shows up before that also.
Does he?
Yeah, he's got a brief moment. If I remember correctly, he shows up before that episode. We're introduced to him before he chooses Picard before that in one episode.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. I don't believe that's his first screen time. It doesn't have a lot, but dear Lord, he knocks out of the park.
Yeah. No, he. And I just love the image of this like fat, indolent Klingon. There's like, yeah, everything's going to shit. Nothing I can do about it. Been poisoned over the course of many years. It's in the wine. And he takes a big slug of wine.
He's like, yeah, I'm gonna die. I know I'm dying. I know I'm dying from poison. Nothing I can do about it. So I'm gonna make sure that things
I'm
go
going
the
to
way.
piss off everyone involved. Guess what, Picard? You're in charge of figuring out my successor. That's going to really irritate everybody.
It's not just he doesn't want to do it just because it's going to irritate them though.
No, he does it because he knows Gowron and Duras have no interest in figuring out who actually did it. And in fact, it's a detriment to both their causes. So, yeah, he chooses an outsider to figure out who killed him.
And there's also the fact that he does have that respect for Picard, which is why I'm sort of mentioning that he showed up before that, because he knew Picard. If I remember correctly, he's. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember which order it happens in. When, if I remember correctly, the whole bit where Worf gets his discommendation from the council, I believe that's before the Civil War. So that's where we see Kempek before.
So, yeah, you're right, because part of the big problem is that Worf is on the Enterprise and no one wants to deal with this Annalise Patak, right?
Right, and it's also the sort of source of a bit of conflict between him and his brother.
Yes. Well, the Civil War happened. The Civil War happens because the Duras sisters find Duras' illegitimate son, and then insist that he's got the rightful claim to be High Chancellor because Gowron won it by default. Duras got dead, and that's why the Civil War happens.
Oh, that's the Civil War. You're right.
Yeah,
but the discommendation.
But the discommendation episode happens before
the choosing the Chancellor.
Yep,
that's right.
Right.
Because that's I've got that order right. I just get right. There we go. Yeah, we got it. Okay. But yeah, Kempek is because Kempek was so. The thing I loved about Kempek in the whole thing with Worf's family thing is his how. I loved how he interacts with Worf in that, because he basically is like he wants to be fair to Worf, but he can't, and he knows he can't.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. I'm remembering the episode much better now, and the being like, yeah, no, I can't do right by you, and I regret that. But this is for the best of this is the best thing we can do for the Empire, despite the corruption underneath it. This is what we have to do, or everything could fall apart. And Worf is like, yeah, no, I'm down with that. I know what happened. I know that I'm not I know that I have my honor, and I don't need that recognized by you guys. So yeah, I'll take the hit. I'll take the hit for the team.
Which
is another reason why Worf is awesome.
Yeah. Well, there's also the fact that his there's a lot. It also sort of showed like Worf actually respected Kempek for telling him that, for being
yes, being upfront about it.
Yeah. And it's also it also is the wonderful thing of it's where and this is where Kempek discovered exactly what kind of man Picard is.
Yeah. Yeah, because Picard was the big one who was like, no, this is wrong. You should. It does not matter. You need to bring these people to justice. The truth must come out.
But that he was willing to accept Worf's decision.
Yeah.
And that he also understood sort of the way Klingon honor works.
Yes.
Which is very
better than Worf does, actually.
Yes. I love that. That's one of the things it's one of the many things that's great about Picard, and I just love that. I just love sort of. It's as I said. It's where Kempek decided. Okay, I know exactly who I'm going to. It's sort of it's very clear that was the thing. It's like, okay, I now know who's going to be the mediator when I die.
Yep.
Picard is perfect. And,
He is exactly who I need to make sure everyone gets screwed.
Because he will be so completely impartial, it'll be painful to them.
Yes. The man is incorruptible. He's perfect. Yeah.
That's the other thing is I liked about that. Also, the whole thing with and sort of from what falls out from Gowron becoming Chancellor is, I think that whole thing with where Picard the whole thing, the way Picard handled it, I think that impressed Gowron.
Yes.
See, Gowron's like, that's not how I would have done it, but I have to respect how he did it.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I really like about the Klingons in general is you have the idealized Klingon in Worf, the man who keeps his honor close to himself and will always do what's right no matter what. And then you have the much more common honor you have amongst the Klingons at large, which is the recognition of your peers. And how those two, the conflict that arises from those two. And it's usually done with Worf butting heads with Klingon culture at large, but you also see other Klingons trying to maintain that balance. Martok comes to mind. Martok is an excellent example of someone who realizes that he needs the honor recognized in him by others to get anything done, but at the same time trying to keep that righteousness within himself.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why I love Martok. He's great.
Oh,
he's a man who manages to find that balance.
Oh, he's a great character. I love him. But it's again one of the thing I think one of the things I find so fascinating about Gowron is he might actually be the perfect Chancellor because he is entirely willing to sacrifice his personal honor and ignore it completely for the good of the Empire.
Yes.
And for the honor of the Empire.
Yeah, and that's one of the interesting things about Gowron is he clearly does not give a fuck about his personal honor.
Right.
Like, he might not actually have any. It's just more concerned with both the honor of the Empire and being recognized as honorable so that he can get shit done.
Right.
And if he needs to sell some babies on the black market or make some dwarf porn, he'll do it if it'll get the job done.
At any rate, I think that's going to do it for this week.
Yeah, we've been going on for about an hour and a half.
Yeah. Anywho, thank you everybody for watching. Normally we save time at the end of each episode for viewer questions. Let me check to see if we got any quickly. Hang on. I forgot to do that before we started. I forgot to check before we started, so let me quickly... there we go. And do we have any... Ooh, we might actually... Okay, that's nope. We have a question, but not really one for this show. So we have to handle that later.
Not one that we can do in the 30 seconds towards the end.
Yeah, no. So, anyways, we do like taking viewer questions. So, if you've got questions you'd like to ask us, if you'd like us to answer on the show, we try to save time at the end of each episode for that. You can email us. Our email address is surlygrognards@yahoo.com. surlygrognards@yahoo.com. Or you can hit us up on, or if you're listening to us on YouTube, you can post them in the comments, and we'll check them there. Additionally, we if you've got feedback for us, ways we can make the show better, things we can improve, etc., constructive criticism, we love getting
That
that
is the
stuff.
best stuff. That stuff is the bestest.
So just send it on to either our email address, surlygrognards@yahoo.com, or post them in the comments or what have you. If you've got show topic suggestions for us, we also adore those. Because means we can spend less time sort of arguing about what we're going to talk about.
Yes.
Not that we really argue about that. It's more,
What are we going to do now? You have any ideas? I don't know. You have any ideas? I've got this idea. We did that last week, Eric.
oh,
yeah.
Or
Actually, I was thinking about it.
Yep. The other reason is that means we can talk about the stuff you guys want us to talk about.
Yes.
So email them to us, post them in the comments, etc. I also tweet out when the show's going to go live. We record we record Monday nights at about 7 p.m. Eastern here on hitbox.tv/mecha-gm. I tweet out when we're going to go live. My Twitter handle is @mechagm, so you can catch me there. The recordings of the show go up onto YouTube, youtube.com/mechagm. No dash. And that's basically it. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. We're probably going to be doing an episode on tabletop wargaming in the near future. We might have a special guest for that. Should be fun.
We should totally do that.
Yeah. We've talked about tabletop wargaming before, but I kind of want to talk about it more.
Because it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's going to do it for this week. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you guys soon. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye.
Bye.